So on Monday, Star Trek Discovery was released to the rest of the world. I caught it on Netflix, and I'm here to discuss it. And joining me, I have a special guest of the Meeple People podcast, Jamie Adams.
Hello there, thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming along. So we have to admit that this is actually the second recording of this. We did a version yesterday, but somebody fucked up the audio. It was me. And so this is the second attempt at that. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a spoiler-free section to give our general thoughts about the show and what we think of it, and then go into a spoiler section to talk about the nitty-gritty of it. Cool. So Jamie, spoiler-free, what did you think of Star Trek Discovery?
In short, I quite liked it.
I quite liked it too.
A little bit ropey in some areas, but it's got a good grounding and it's got a lot to build on. And I mean, a good place to build stuff off of, and I like that.
Yeah. I won't say like, oh, I love it, but I think it shows loads and loads of potential to be a really, really fantastic show, and I'm pretty happy with it. Yeah. First of all, because like last time we talked about the visuals, this show looks absolutely gorgeous.
It does look pretty good. I mean, it's for all the people complain that it doesn't look anything like the original series, that supposedly it's 10 years before. Do you know what? Make a show with 1960s production values in 2017, see how far you go. Yeah. And you know what? I think this looks pretty good.
Yeah, and I mean, I've said this before, but my explanation is just, I chalk it up to time passes, in that, because chronologically between the original series and the motion picture, which has a complete production design revamp. The Enterprise looks different, the uniforms are different, the Klingons are different.
Isn't that where they put green and orange into the uniforms as well?
Did they? No.
It was at some point that...
The motion picture was just all beige. Yeah, the motion picture was just all beige, like rubbish and grey. But, that's a complete redesign of pretty much everything, and that's only 3 years chronologically between the original series and the motion picture, and this is 10 years before the motion picture, before the original series. So I'm just like, time passes. But I don't really care, honestly. But that's my explanation. Is just it's 10 years before.
There's rumors floating around the internet that if it gets more series, and stories are getting more series as it goes on, that things will begin to look a bit more original series-esque, which, if they do that, that's fine. I'm good with that. But I think, again, it's got a good basis, and right now it's a good mixture in between. The uniforms look like they've got the Enterprise blue, and they've got little bits here and there. They've got what I really like, the comm badges with the ranks into them. I love the uniforms in general. I just think they look fantastic. I want to get them. I want to buy them from somewhere, so I can wear them. I saw the official ones are up for pre-order. $500 to you, sir.
Oof. Okay, maybe I'll wait for them to go down in price. Because I would say I also got, because I've been playing Star Trek Online recently, and they released the uniform pack for that game, and I've kitted out all my crew in brand new Discovery uniforms, and they're looking pretty snazzy. Cool. I really like the design of the Shenzhou. I'm probably not saying that correctly. Shenzhou, yeah. Yeah, Shenzhou. Because
we're from Scotland, we can get away with it.
Yeah. But I really like the design of that ship. I really love the underhanging bridge. I thought that was
what sells it. One of the best things for me is I love the underhanging bridge. I love the old but new look. I was looking at it going, there's a little bit Miranda, I can see in there, a little bit the NX-1, a little bit Jaeger class. You can just see what's come before and what will come out of it. So I'm very pleased about that.
Totally, yeah. I also like how big the bridge is. Like, all the environments just seem very expansive this time. It's less kind of nautical submarine, but it's very expansive, the bridge set. And I love like the design of all the graphics and the lighting and stuff. It's very, very nice. It resembles the USS Kelvin from Star Trek 2009, and I really like the design of that bridge. So I'm perfectly happy with that.
That's a divisive statement for a lot of people. No, I'm joking. I don't mind it, but I know that I went online last night and had a look at what people were saying, the negative press people were saying, the things we were saying, and a lot of it was, it looks just like the Kelvin timeline. They've got the wrong this is wrong, that's wrong, the wrong look at the nacelles, the uniform should be different color, they've got phasers, not laser pistols like Pike had in the cage. And I was going, well, do you know what? This is their Star Trek. Yeah, exactly. I don't care. They're doing something good for it. And you know what? It was a pilot. Things change in a pilot. I don't care how.
Yeah, I honestly, I just don't care about it. Because for me, I mean, sure, you can nitpick that stuff apart, but at the end of the day, it is a nitpick. It doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. And what does matter in the grand scheme of things is always story, character, theme. And I still think that's very strong here. Yeah. Do you want to talk about the characters a bit?
I was going to say, just talking about the characters. I think Sonequa Martin Green as Michael Burnham is doing a great performance. That really nice internal conflict you can see, and just doing just enough of the physical inflections, the vocal inflections, that you can see that Vulcan undercurrent to her. And there was one point where she paused for 1 second, and I thought she was going to say illogical, and she went on. I was just like, "You faked out. Nice one."
Yeah,
nice.
Definitely. You can totally see like the Vulcan upbringing. It's a very, not only is it articulate emotionally, but also physically. There's a lot of work going on in there to make she like stands like a Vulcan, and just her whole kind of physical presence is very Vulcan-esque, and it's just a really, really good performance all around. And it's very kind of, it's quite a, not bizarre, but it's quite a unique kind of protagonist where she's not super charismatic. She's not like she's not even that likable in a lot of what she does, but she has this kind of drive and this kind of raw kind of wit to her that is really quite compelling to watch.
I think watching some of the interactions with other members of the crew, especially Lieutenant Saru, played by Doug Jones, I think especially the interaction between those two, it's almost like ripped straight from Spock-McCoy conflicts.
Exactly,
and I think, but that's not a bad thing in any way. It's just a nice kind of, it's a nice thing.
Yeah, and everyone loves Saru, I think. Even people that are like, this isn't Star Trek, blah, blah, blah. I think everyone loves Saru.
Oh, Saru, for me, he's my favourite character right now.
Yeah, because I was saying in our first version of this, where it was like, if I was making a Star Trek film, I would be chasing down Doug Jones just to play anything. Yep. Like, even if he wasn't the main character, when he was announced in the cast, I was like, absolutely yes. I was very happy with Michelle Yeoh and Jason Isaacs and all that kind of stuff, but Doug Jones was the one I was really, really excited about, just because he's such an amazing physical performer. And he's a genuinely good actor himself. There was an obscure indie movie he did, I'm forgetting the name of it, but there was an indie movie he did a while ago where he was playing a normal human, which is rare for him. And he does have genuine acting ability, but it really is his physical performance and all these little cool, subtle tics and things that he does with the character that make him really unique and really a joy to watch in a lot of ways.
It's also good to hear his own voice for the first time probably in a while.
Yeah.
Because I know obviously in Hellboy he was dubbed over by, I'm going to get the name wrong, David Hyde Pierce.
Yeah. Well, he for the first one he was, but for the second one he used his own voice.
Yeah, I haven't seen the second one, so fair enough. But also I think the comic performance of Saru, which isn't in itself necessarily comic, it's the comic situation, the comic reactions that he does to it, I think is just really good.
Yeah,
and again,
like
you said, it's those small little ticks, it's just tiny things that, as a physical performer, you can see that background going, oh, that's saying a hell of a lot, and I like that.
Yeah. And I think he's not even that prevalent in the two episodes. Like, he's not on screen for a whole lot, but he leaves a really good impression. I'm really looking forward to him seeing pop up in even more episodes. I also thought Michelle Yeoh was great. I mean, Michelle Yeoh is great in most things she's in.
Outstanding actress anyway, but what a great performance. It's rolling some of the best aspects of a lot of the captains previously. So you've got say the wit of say like Picard or something like that. You've got that diplomacy of Picard. You've got that wit of that courage, and you just go, great performance, Michelle Yeoh.
You totally buy her as like good. She's captain material.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, where she has that kind of warm and
able to switch from that warmth, friendly to serious straight away.
Yeah, exactly. She has this kind of warmth and kind of motherly guiding kind of deal to her, where she's very encouraging to her crew and very affectionate in a way to her crew. I don't know if affectionate is the right word, but you kind of see that very friendly and approachable personality, much like Picard and Kirk and Janeway to a degree. And then, of course, when the switch is flipped, it's almost like not necessarily Cisco in a way, but as you say, she is able to handle that. Being very relatable and being very likable while also being very authoritative and commanding at the same time. And it's a really great performance. And a cool character as well, yeah.
Yeah, I really like her. I can't wait to see more of her.
Yeah.
I'd also like to give props to Chris Obi, who's playing T'Kuvma, the lead Klingon. For all that it occasionally sounded like the actors were finding it difficult speaking past their prosthetic teeth.
Yeah, I did think that, yeah.
Yeah, a little bit gummy-mouthed.
Yeah, they were a bit...
I thought it was... Come. That's not mocking him, that's mocking how the Klingon sounded. I'm not like that. I think he had a really physical, that physical heft that he brought to that. I really liked it. And again, there's almost that vulnerability that you can kind of see behind him, which he does mask very well, but you still see that creeping through every now and again.
Yeah, there's something in his voice, the tone of voice that he's using is kind of, it's like,
well, he's actually
desperation.
British, actually.
Yeah, I heard that.
He's a British. I didn't realize he was a British actor because I've seen him in American Gods as Anubis, and he has this wonderfully deep, basso profundo voice. And again, hearing it here in a different aspect, it's fantastic. It's that wonderful timbre that he has.
Yeah, I mean, much like Doug Jones and Sonequa Martin Green, is that they have there's a lot of work gone into them physically in their performance, as well as emotionally. And even though it's quite difficult to kind of act past all that makeup, he totally pulls it off, and he does a really, really good job. And you totally get where he's coming from, and you totally, while, again, the viewer isn't necessarily meant to, or maybe they could, agree with his point of view, you get where he's coming from, and he's not a cartoon bad guy.
No, he's not one-dimensional, which is nice.
Yeah. The Klingons are this.
I will say,
the Klingons are very multifaceted.
Very much. No, I was good. No, I was getting away from the character discussion, but I would agree with you. Yeah, quite a multifaceted thing. It's not just quite one-dimensional mustache-twirling bad guys. We're doing what we do because we've got a reason, and it's nice to see that. And it's not something. It's something you can almost empathise with. Exactly,
because I remember in Star Trek V, The Final Frontier, the reason those Klingons show up is literally because they're bored shooting space garbage. Like, I think that's a line of dialogue where, like, he says in Klingon, "I'm bored shooting space garbage. I'm gonna go find and destroy a Federation starship just cause." Yeah, but there's no. So, like, that's kind of the discussion on the thematic thing, and I think we can get into this more in spoilers, but the theme of this one seems to be a kind of multiculturalism versus a more xenophobic or purity attitude.
Which I think there's still that initial idea, which goes right the way back to where no man has gone before. It goes back to the cage, and it is, even if you look at it very simply as the Klingons as the USSR ideology, and it's that the idea of subsuming other things into yourselves and wanting to remain a freestanding individual. It's something that's gone all the way through Treks for over 50 years now, and it's nice to see, if not a slightly ham-fisted return to it, then it's going, this is something we're still able to bring up. As I've said in the previous record, I think one of the things that science fiction has going for it above a lot of other genres is, you might think I'm wrong with this, but the fact you can take a lot of, say, modern issues or political issues or hot button topics, you can view it through the medium of it's hundreds of thousands of years in the future in space with aliens instead, and go, well, okay, that's an interesting way of looking at it, and maybe it will do a completely, you maybe see a perspective you didn't see previously because it's people or nations that you have maybe biases against on Earth.
Again, totally. I mean,
that's one interpretation for me. I will say this though, visuals wise, still too much lens flare.
I didn't think it was that bad.
I know people are going to complain so much about the lens flare, and you know what? Grow up. I'm not disagreeing with you that the lens flare, some of it is okay, too much is off-putting and just makes it bad, and yeah. But I don't think that it has lens flare is necessarily a bad thing. I think it has too much lens flare.
Yeah, I really don't think this one has too much. I mean, I said that the worst cases of lens flare was in the first J.J. Abrams Star Trek movie, which is just completely...
Absolutely.
Because I remember watching the behind the scenes of that, and they literally had crew members off screen with torches to shine lights towards the lens. Because the idea that they were going for, I think, was like the future was so big and bright that the lens can't even contain it all. And I'm like, oh, cool idea in concept, but in practice it got a bit overboard where Kirk is running from one side of the room to the other, and it's like you're having a seizure. Like it's just
and it made it look like what Honest Trailers pointed out, this high-tech Apple store with just lights in your face, just going
exactly. And you actually notice a difference when you get to Star Trek Beyond, where Justin Lin really doesn't use a lot of them. There's a few here and there, but they're mostly absent from Star Trek Beyond, which I thought was quite cool. I really didn't notice them in Star Trek Discovery until you pointed them out, and then I'm thinking, oh yeah, well, few here and there, yeah. But it doesn't bother me a whole lot. Yeah.
No.
The Klingon costumes are very spiky.
That's the most divisive thing.
Yeah. I mean, I like the Klingon design overall, but the costume is a bit overboard for me.
Yeah, costume's a little bit overboard. I understand it looks quite ceremonial. How practical it is, well, it remains to be seen. And the ship itself, that's a bit unnecessarily spiky for me. But again,
I do like the ship. I like the ship a lot.
It's aesthetic nitpicks. I think the ship looks nice, but as I said, I think it's unnecessarily a bit spiky for me.
Yeah. I like the whole thing of like having the hull lined with corpses and things like that. That's not a spoiler. That's in the first 10 minutes or whatever. But when they line the corpses with sarcophaguses and stuff, I thought that's really cool. It's a really
nice, and it's also a really nice throwback to, I think it's a TOS novel or something like that, or one or two TOS novels where they make reference to it's to do with the Klingon afterlife. So it's nice to see that kind of being, for want of a phrase.
Didn't know that, yeah. I mean, I always maintain that in terms of Klingon ships, you pretty much cannot beat the D7 battlecruiser, because it's just something about that design is just spot on for the Klingons.
It's really nice. I mean, I'm a sucker for the Bird of Prey, but that's
Bird of Prey is really nice as well. Yeah,
more of Cavort rather than Burrell, but there's not really much difference.
No, it's bigger and smaller. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But it is again nice to see how even in that ship, it's again, you said things change in the 10 years between the Discovery pilot and the original series official starting. You can see where the D7 class can be born out of that. Totally,
yeah. That kind of design philosophy, of like a forward section and a neck section.
Bulbous forward head section and the really kind of chunky rear end and the two massive engines.
Yeah.
As I said to you yesterday, talking to some friends, and we were, discussing it, and we got onto the subject of how does the Discovery pilot rank in relation to all the other series pilots.
Yeah.
And again, we were discussing it, and we kind of said we'd probably rank it second or third. We're still
second or third, because overall Star Trek doesn't have that strong a pilots. Surprisingly.
No.
Yeah, Encounter at Farpoint is not that good.
We said Emissary was going to be either number 1, 2, Emissary and either, I think Where No Man Has Gone Before.
Yeah,
I think we're
which is technically the second or third pilot for the original series, but it's a good one.
And then
and then Encounter at Farpoint's not that good. Voyager pilot's pretty meh. Enterprise pilot's pretty meh.
It's not bad, but
it's not. Well, yeah. It drags a lot in the second act. Encounter at Farpoint.
It does, but to be fair, the first episode of this pilot does drag a bit. Again, because it's setting up a lot.
I didn't find that it did drag. I actually found that it was over too quick for me. Because I remember, I was watching, because I'd made a whole event out of it, like popcorn and all that kind of stuff. And by the time the end credits of the first episode was over, I was like, oh, that was the first episode already. I was like, oh, okay. Because that was what made me even more excited for the second episode, because I was like, oh, there it was. And now the second one, and now I've got to wait a week for the next one, and now that makes me even more excited.
I can't wait. A lot of my quibbles are predominantly aesthetics, which I know isn't great, because I really should be, have more of a criticism about the theme of the plot, as my that. I can't really talk about the plot right now, but for me, the opening credits, or the title, the end credit sequence, as I said before, it's one that's going to have to grow on me. I wasn't initially that excited about it. It didn't make me go, oh, this is a great credit sequence, and the theme is not something that you can hum.
Yeah, that's my problem with it. I really like the opening credit sequence. I think it's just gorgeous to look at, and I really didn't expect it to be that way, because I mean, usually the opening credit stuff in Star Trek, aside from Enterprise, is mostly like the ship flies in space, but this time it was like oil paintings and all this kind of
here's all these old
artistic stuff, and I was like,
technology and
I was like, I didn't expect that, but I really like it. It's grown on me very, very quickly. But you are right that the theme tune I'm not that impressed by. It's very nice and atmospheric and kind of sets the mood, and stylistically it's on the right track, but I feel like it's the intro to a larger piece which never quite comes. Yes. Something I actually tried doing was I was talking to a friend about this the other day. Something I did as a random editing experiment was put the theme tune for the Yorktown space station from Star Trek Beyond over that sequence, and I'm kind of like, that I would have wanted this instead, because I still remember the Yorktown theme tune and I can still hum that in my head, whereas the opening theme tune for the actual theme tune for Discovery I can't really hum. I can't really remember how it goes. It's like, I remember the general feeling it gives off, but it's not really something that catches on.
My girlfriend watched the first episode. No, I watched the first 2 episodes, and then later in the day, my girlfriend came back and she watched the first episode with me, so she could get a kind of neutral viewing for it. I wasn't going to tell her anything. And, she was kind of saying, oh, the music's nice, but there are times when the music wants to elicit an emotional response from me. And I'm just not feeling it. And it's just kind of going, the music says, oh, you must feel angry here, or you must feel sad here. It's going, no, either the acting's not doing for me, or I will feel it. The music doesn't. Yes, it's informing the scene, and it's a general thing, but it shouldn't be the main motivator in eliciting a response. The moment in Best of Both Worlds where you see Picard as the Borg for the first time, you just go, oh my god!
Totally.
It's not because the music's like,
yeah. I mean, it's true that
music is, but
I didn't get fully emotionally invested until the second episode. The first episode, I'm like, I'm intrigued, I'm interested, but the second episode was the one where I actually got emotionally invested and really cared about what was happening to these characters and the events going on around them. But the music criticism, I didn't notice that specifically, but I can see where.
Yeah, I can see
where that might be coming from. Yeah. But so anything else you want to talk about, or shall we go into spoiler territory?
Let me just double check very quickly. I think the ship looked nice, good performances. Yep. Anything else? I think I'd save for spoilers.
Yeah. So like overall, the spoiler-free impression is I really like it. I'm looking forward to more.
Absolutely. One more thing. She did. My girlfriend also liked they didn't sit down and spoon feed stuff to the audience like some sci-fi kind of goes. And again, like a first episode goes, well, this is warp speed, and warp speed is traveling at the speed of light, and this is a phaser. What does a phaser do? This is a photon torpedo. This is what this is. It just went, nope.
Yeah, totally. It just flings you in the deep end. Yeah.
Yeah, and again, I like a lot of sci-fi. I quite like that. You just go, okay, let's pick this up as we go along. Great.
Exactly. Yeah, good. Okay, so let's get into spoilers then. For those who haven't seen it, or for those who don't care, or whatever, this is your official spoiler warning. 3, 2, 1. Click on another video if you don't want to know. Okay, spoiler section. So, getting into the nitty-gritty of the spoiler section is I really like these 2 episodes because the collective story is essentially this escalating and constantly rising tension until all shit hits the fan and big space battle happens.
Can Michael Burnham mess up?
Yeah, true. It just goes from bad to worse for her, doesn't it? Yeah. Yep. I mean, that's what I quite liked about it, is that even though there was all this stuff going on, and it's like things in the Klingon Empire were changing, things in Starfleet, there were a lot of big things going off in Starfleet, but it was all confined to this one location pretty much. Aside from the prologue at the beginning of the first episode, it was all at this binary star setting, which, by the way, the binary star stuff looked amazing. But it's quite amazing.
Visuals.
Yeah,
top notch.
It's quite impressive how all of this stuff is accomplished, and it really only takes place essentially on 2 ships, and I think that's quite impressive, and it's not what I would have expected, and that was kind of something I was almost concerned about by the trailers, is that aside from a couple of shots of Jason Isaacs and the Discovery, it seemed to all really be on the one ship, and I kind of know why now, because I thought, oh, okay, but it totally works, and you get this sense of. It's like frustrating because you just have these 2 opposing ships and the 2 opposing crews just essentially standing there, and they're both trying. What's going on? Are the Klingons here to attack? Are they here to send a message? How should we react? Should we fire first? All this kind of stuff, and it's this debate of what to do and what to do with what betrays our principles and what would the Klingons understand and who has the right ideology, and it's really fascinating, this kind of clash that's going on. And as I said, very little of it is ever spelled out, that way. There's never a briefing room scene where it's like, where Deanna Troy's like, I sense this from the Klingons, and I think they want this. It was all done through just character interaction.
Really, Deanna?
I sensed considerable deception from the Klingons. Oh, fucking hell!
Wow, the Romulans are lying. Wow, Deanna. I mean. Whatever we are paying you, we have to double it. Oh wait, we're in a moneyless society.
You have a seat on the bridge. Give me fucking useful information, you idiot. He's next to the captain and the first officer.
That's a little microcosm of that. Again, you could argue that Cold War idea. It's the fact that those 2 ships are sitting there, and eventually those 2 fleets are sitting there.
Exactly.
By the way, sorry, sidetrack. Love some of the design of some of the ships. Again, like I said with the Shenzhou, that Walker class ship, you can see what was and what will come after that. With the Klingon ships, you could see some Raptor classes from Enterprise. You could see what would become D7s. Some people say they could see what looked like Cylon Raiders from Battlestar Galactica.
Those like kind of discus fighter
the little arc fighters. It's good, and it looks like even like an old Cheyenne class from the original series, which again is fine. But it's nice to see what stuff that comes out. So these 2 fleets just sitting there, that Cold War idea of that arms race. We've got these things, and someone's going to fire. It's who's going to blink first, and then it's going to be mutually assured madness. Yeah,
that's one of the things that I talked about because that we talked about first is that. For me, this gives off a real Deep Space Nine vibe in the terms of that something that Deep Space Nine did, and something that also Star Trek Beyond did, which is what I really like, is that most of Star Trek takes these Federation principles for granted, of like, we are in the right, and this will always be, and these are stories which kind of attack that. Not necessarily in like complete bold-faced racism or whatever, but they present ideologies which have their own merits and drawbacks that can conflict with the Federation in completely understandable ways. So you can totally see where the Klingons are coming from. And it's almost a noble effort what T'Kuvma's doing. He says, we have 24 houses that have all been fighting each other. This will unite us and this will make us stronger as a species. And I'm like, it's almost the same as what the Federation does in a way of incorporating new races and species and new worlds into the United Federation of Planets, and they become stronger as a whole. But it's just a question of the Klingons want just Klingons to do that, and the Federation want lots of different races to do that. And it's this kind of clash of ideologies, but there's also a lot of similarities between both sides as well, which is just utterly fascinating. It's just the more you think about the themes that are brought up here, the more interesting the story gets.
Keeping the ideas, keeping the race pure, and again, that lovely line, come with the greatest lie, we come in peace. And then he goes, of course, look at what they're doing.
Yeah.
And it's sort of, I was going to say, because that Roddenberry's original idea, that, the utopia, the wagon train to the stars, Starfleet is this great, shining bastion of I guess, moral superiority, some people would say. That's admirable. That's amazing. Of course, the whole point of utopia itself means unobtainable. So it's nice that while the initial stuff is really nice, it is really good telly. After he died, it's almost like they decided to go, okay, now we can. So they did. They went, now we can start exploring the murkier side. And you said, feels a bit like DS9 in that it starts looking at a slightly darker look, how the Federation would handle prolonged conflict, how the Federation would handle, war, the casualties of war. And even Giorgio says, what is death? This isn't what I taught you. War. This isn't war. War is, screaming and funerals, and that's something you could imagine, Cisco saying in DS9, which is nice.
Exactly, yeah. It's kind of like this funny case of everyone's wrong and everyone's right at the same time. Because one of my favorite scenes is when Burnham talks to Sarek, and he tells that story of the Vulcan hello, and he's like, well, when we encountered the Klingons, they destroyed us outright. So every single time we encountered them after that, we fired upon them first until they understood that they should probably talk to us. When she says the line, we need to give them a Vulcan hello, and you realize that, and then you think that the title of the episode is the Vulcan hello. Yeah. Again, suddenly everything just twists, and you go, "Oh right, okay." Yeah. But man, it's really fascinating because it is one of those things where, as Giorgio said, it's like Starfleet does not fire first, and again, it's like that's totally an admirable position. But then at the same time, to Klingons, that's almost a big insult.
That's a sign of weakness.
Yeah, that you won't confront them in that way. It's like, you don't have the guts to do this.
Violence was met with violence, and violence was met with respect. That's how the Vulcans and the Klingons kept their peace treaty.
Exactly, yeah.
Or have got the peace treaty. And I think, again, the Starfleet has always, initially was, that combination of, I don't know, not conquistadors, but explorers, Coast Guard, Polis, and science expeditions. And it's that police actions that they're going to have to deal with.
Yeah, totally.
It's not until over 100 years later that you'll see things like the Dominion War, which is the massive prolonged fights.
Yeah.
I don't know why I gestured. This makes great great listening. It's me gesturing.
Yeah. You can hear the gesturing. But yeah, I mean that's what I really like about this Star Trek stuff is that they take the Federation principles, which are totally wonderful and things that humanity should aspire to, of equality and not bigoted and accepting and diversity and multiculturalism and all that kind of stuff. But then at the same time, there are instances where that doesn't always work, and it's these really interesting, nuanced, difficult questions that Deep Space Nine started bringing up, and Discovery seems to be continuing to bring up. And for me, it just seems like a perfectly logical place for Star Trek to go as a franchise.
I think, the phrase TNG hangover?
Yeah.
I kind of said to my friend, is it possible we're experiencing almost a case of DS9 hangover?
Oh, maybe, yeah.
And my friend said, yeah, that's good, because it means we're getting away from TNG hangover. So I'm like, fair enough. But it's that courage or not courage, but the fact that they are now addressing these slightly darker, slightly heavier themes, and they're not shying away from that, which is initially quite anathema to Star Trek. It's against that idea.
Yeah.
But if you do it in a good way, it can produce some really good viewing, really good performances, really thought-provoking situations. I mean, I saw the Guardian newspaper gave the pilot, or one of the guys in the Guardian gave Discovery pilot 2 stars, and I skim read it, admittedly, and one of the things was it was just quite depressing.
Yeah, I've seen it as well as that.
And I thought, have you seen In the Pale Moonlight?
Yeah.
But for me, it is one of the best, but one of the most depressing things because it is
Moonlight. I love the ending for In the Pale Moonlight. It's so chilling when he turns to the camera and just says, "I can live with it," and then he says, "Computer, erase that entire log," and it's like, ugh.
It's all the fact that he goes, "I think I can live with it," and there's a couple of seconds, and he just goes, "I can live with it."
Yeah.
Then you have crossed the line, and as much as that, I applaud you, you manly son of a bitch.
Yeah. Because I mean, as much as I do love TNG, and I do love the original series, and I quite like Voyager, and I like half of Enterprise. The stories where the good guys are always right can be very good, obviously, but also the stories where the good guys may actually be wrong or may not have the whole truth are just infinitely more fascinating to me. And I think it's one of the reasons Deep Space Nine is one of my favourite TV shows, but also it's something that completely incurs the wrath of other Trekkies who say, this is a betrayal of Gene Roddenberry's vision and so on and so forth. And I think, well, yeah, but...
Well, do you know what?
If you can't
yes, it
accept...
is, but that's a different style. TV is going to evolve. The idea is that we're there in the 60s. Remember, and also the political backdrop of the time in the Cold War. Sad to say, not just sad to say, but that was the kind of TV that was, it was important, it was educational, it was informative, it had that really great sense behind it. It was capturing part of the zeitgeist. And as the time moves on, you get into the 80s and the 90s, and suddenly things are not so clear. The Berlin Wall came down. So suddenly the Klingons aren't exactly the bad guys all the time now. There's a Klingon on the bridge of the Enterprise. And then you get to DS9 in the mid-90s. Again, not that different, but things are beginning to change. And then you get to Enterprise, which, things are... In those years, things are very different. I know I missed out Voyager, and I'm not just counting Voyager. Voyager just happened so far, away that things are so strange. And Enterprise, things change. The broken bow incident, the encounter with the Romulans, the Xindi themselves, and now we've got Star Trek Discovery going. Yes, it might be you could argue quite reasonably there is a betrayal of Gene Roddenberry's idea, but at the same time, there's a lot of stuff that I think he had dear that is still quite shining through. If you ask me to back that up, you've got to give me a bit of time because I haven't got any Word documents on it. But I'm sure I could go, but you don't take it all literally. Yeah,
for me, my attitude is always that it does uphold Gene Roddenberry's vision. It doesn't betray it, but it kind of challenges some of the ideas, is more an accurate way to say it. But for me, it's like none of the people, as the captain, the most righteous character in these two episodes, says, we do not fire first. And it's true, they don't fire until they're fired upon. And they're constantly, every opportunity they try diplomacy. It's like, even after the battle has already started, the Admiral declares, he's like, let's try diplomacy now. They've lost a lot of people, we've lost a lot of people, let's try this again. So they're always trying to push diplomacy, they're always trying to push peaceful. No one likes being in the space battle. So for me, it's like, the Federation is the Gene Roddenberry Federation of, everyone works together, it's super diverse, super multicultural, everyone's equal, and they're just trying to do it peacefully. Unfortunately, the Klingons have other ideas, and it's about kind of meeting opposing viewpoints on their terms and not assuming that they think like you. That's kind of the challenge that's being presented, and that's really, really fascinating.
It's really good. I also love the fact the first time you see the Admiral's hologram, and Burnham walks in, and the Admiral just turns around, just bitches her out for a second, just goes, I'm going to try not doing that over a culture I haven't seen in 100 years, and just turns back. It's like, oh, you dumb missed up.
Might as well have turned around and given her like a holographic slap across the face. And be like,
holographic bitch slap. Oh,
what you doing?
Oh, it was just a really nice moment, and again, as I said before, one of my favourite things about the episode, and just going back very quickly to Doug Jones's performance of Saru, and he said, small tick, as I said before, it was a moment where he's in the captain's chair on the bridge, they're not sure what's going on, he goes to answer, but it's clearly cheating. Burnham, I think, walks in behind, and immediately he just stands up and is just like, oh, thank goodness someone of authority is here, someone who's actually in command is here. Okay, what do we do?
Totally, yeah.
Again, love that little vocal tick, sorry.
Yeah. Great performance all around. I mean, so what I really like about this one is that it is very much the cold open of this overall story, and that's something which is quite exciting and quite different, is that while Deep Space Nine had overarching plots, and even Enterprise toyed with that, this is really the first proper Star Trek show which is completely serialized. So this is very much the cold open, and why I really like it, but I'm not jumping on board saying, I love it, it's amazing, because I don't know where it's going to go just yet. This is very much the teaser, and I want to see Act 1 and Act 2 and Act 3 and how they unfold and what goes on with the Discovery, because it hasn't even shown up yet. I've heard the third episode is even, reviews have been saying that the third episode is where it really kicks off. And I was like, well, I thought it really kicked off in the second one, but I guess we'll have to see in the third one.
It kicked off in the second one, and it was just the whole pilot was just the prologue. It was like, this is all what's happened. Here's what's about to happen. And what I'm hoping is going to happen if the second episode's anything to go by, is that the flashbacks which occurred throughout the episode, is basically how we're going to see a lot more of Michelle Yeoh. Because I was pretty surprised that she got a battler through the chest.
True, yeah.
As surprised was I that Chris Obi got a phaser in the head. Although now he's got the back of the head, yes. But now he's got his holy war. It's a terrible joke. I'm here all week.
Yeah, very terrible joke. But
I see that, and obviously that flashback when Sarek and Burnham first beamed aboard the Enterprise.
Yeah, and how different Burnham is, where she's just like complete 100% Vulcan. She's like a robot.
Without the ears, she is just a Vulcan. And even Sarek has to tell her to behave and actually has to instruct her on protocol, which is a nice little thing. And seeing how those two, Burnham and Giorgio's relationship's going to develop, and see how it made her into the first officer that she was at the beginning of the series. I can't wait for that, and it's going to be nice. So then you'll be able to see both what's going to happen to her in the present, as she's probably busted out of jail by Lorca to go on the Discovery, and then maybe decisions that she's faced before, similar things that's happened, and how that affected her on the Shenzhou.
Yeah, exactly. I find the character really quite interesting in general, but I'm really, really interested to see where else she goes and how else she develops and how she gets out of the situation that she's in, because it really does leave her in a horrible place. At the life imprisonment, they said, stripped of rank, life imprisonment. And I'm like, oof, how is she going to work her way up from that? Because what I've also heard is that because Saru appears on the Discovery, and it's kind of like, how are the other crewmates from the Shenzhou going to react to seeing her again? Because from their point of view, she committed mutiny on the ship. And part of it, the conflict is her fault. So,
and she started a war.
Exactly, yeah.
I want to just suggest the courtroom scene at the end. Yeah, stripped of rank, prison for life. For me, that scene felt slightly tacked on, because it was like 30 seconds of just going, here's bad stuff. And I understand why, because they're going, right, this is a situation that Burnham has found herself in, the situation that she made. And she is the only one that really the viewer should be paying attention to right now. Not the three admirals, but the choice to put the admirals, hide their faces behind smoke, was just kind of a bit silly. And it felt like they'd done the test viewing and went, it looks all right. I don't understand what's going to happen in the third episode. And they went, right, okay, we'll do a quick reshoot. We'll add a courtroom or something like that. It looked a bit like that. Now, I'm perfectly willing to accept. I'm happy to, if there was a good reason for it, and there usually is. But it just felt like a little bit. Yeah, you've done bad. You're paying for it. Done.
Yeah, I've heard that criticism from other people. Personally, I didn't find that. I think that because this is the character's lowest moment, coming in and kind of delivering a kicking her while she's down kind of thing, I thought that scene was done quite well. It is a bit daft to have the admirals in complete shadowy figures at a desk going like life imprisonment kind of thing. But for me, it was just like, it's just artistic license, and because at this moment the audience is supposed to be empathizing completely with Burnham and be in her shoes, from her perspective, this is probably what that felt like. So it was the visuals kind of illustrating the emotion more than the logic of the scene, funnily enough.
Yes.
But for me it worked. But I know I can see where others are coming from, and that seemed a bit cheesy and a bit overly artistic in some ways.
It's not that it took anything away from it. It was just a little bit okay.
Yeah, totally. Anyway, we're at over 45 minutes now, so I think we should wrap up soon. My kind of final sentiment is I really, really like it. Really looking forward to seeing where it's going. For those who kind of complain about the visuals looking different and so on and so forth, for me, despite the credit that Gene Roddenberry gets, there is a long list of creatives that have made Star Trek what it is, and reinvention is really the name of the game when it comes to Star Trek. If it was just doing the same old thing, I don't think it would have lasted 50 years, not even really close. And if you want more of the old stuff, it's like you've got how many seasons?
You've got, I don't know about how many seasons, but you've got about 720 odd episodes of Star Trek.
Of the older stuff, yeah.
If you don't like Discovery, that's absolutely fine. You know what? No one has to like everything. That's why it's amazing we have all this variation in the world.
Yeah.
But please don't bitch about it on the internet like it's a corruption of your Star Trek, because sad to say, it's not your Star Trek, not my Star Trek. It's nobody's Star Trek apart from kind of CBS's, sadly, because they own the rights to it, sort of. And they can do whatever they want, and no one is stopping you from going back and watching TOS. That still exists. Still exists.
Yeah,
it's still great.
I always say, like, people who say this isn't Star Trek, this is a betrayal of Star Trek, it's not. Star Trek is a very, very multifaceted franchise, and the sheer number of subgenres and styles that Star Trek has taken on, you know, this may not be the Star Trek you prefer, but it is Star Trek. And even though there's lots of details which I'm sure you could kind of nitpick apart, in the grand scheme of things, what matters is story, character, and theme, and I still think that's really, really strong here. If it continues to be as strong as this and continues to build on what we've seen in these 2 episodes, we could have a really, really fantastic show here, and I'm really looking forward to the next episode. Jamie, would you like to quickly plug your podcast that you do every now and then?
Yes, I'm one half of the Meeple People podcast, which is myself and my colleague Sam, talking about tabletop games in a lot of capacities, be they board games, card games, role-playing games. We try and get a lot in. So if you're interested in any of them, pop over to Facebook, Meeple People Podcast, have a little listen to us. We're available on SoundCloud and iTunes. If you've got a Star Trek frame of interest, I'm recently been talking about the Star Trek Adventures role-playing game from Modiphius that's just been released, which I have been running a little bit and have played a little bit. So I'm probably going to keep you all interested in that. And also just lots of really good board games. So have a wee listen.
Those are myself and Jamie's thoughts on Star Trek Discovery. Tell me your thoughts below in the comments, whether you agree, disagree, what you think the 3rd episode will be up to. And as always, have a good one, live long and prosper.